Well, the convoy protesters may have had their trucks towed away out of Ottawa's downtown core, but experts say the anti-mandate movement that the protests thrust into the national spotlight will not disappear. Joining us this morning is David Hoffman. He's the professor of sociology at the University of New Brunswick. Interesting angle to this story, Professor.
Yes, very interesting and a lot to watch.
Yeah, well, let's start with the convoy sparking protests around the world. We saw trucker protests pop up in places like France, Australia, and New Zealand. They organized to oppose pandemic-related mandates in a similar fashion. How did this movement evolve over the past month?
Well, the far-right elements that have co-opted the original anti-trucker mandate essentially fed the global far-right movement in terms of energy and momentum. So we saw something similar happen in 2017 with the Charlottesville protests in the United States, cause a number of protests to occur here in Canada. So even though that the trucks and the protesters have been cleared out of Ottawa, what we're going to see here is a wave of energy and essentially momentum from the global far-right elements that feed off of what they see as a perceived success from the Ottawa movement, which, even though now it's dissolved, still is seen as a far-right pulpit to share their ideas. It's seen as a successful way for a small minority of individuals, which the trucker convoy essentially was, to bully or put pressure on elected officials, not only in Canada, but worldwide.
What form, then, do you think that the anti-mandate movement will take after the protesters are dispersed? We know that there's still charges coming. They still have to make their way through the courts. So where does this go from here?
So what we're likely to see is a bunch of spin-off movements here in Canada. At least the far-right elements, or the more extreme elements of the trucker convoy, which wasn't a monolithic entity to begin with, will again feel energized, go off their separate ways to separate parts of the country, and continue to push their various ideologies and agendas. Like we saw with the Coutts arrest of and seizure of weapons, that was a small, violent group of individuals who were attached to the convoy. We're going to see more moderate elements of the groups that took part in this protest go off and essentially engage in high-risk activism, pushing, again, their own agendas. But we'll also see some of the smaller far-right elements as well become emboldened, and it's going to be a concern for security and public safety in Canada and elsewhere.
I want to talk to you about money. The convoy raised more than $18 million in a short amount of time between two crowdsourcing sites, or two main crowdsourcing sites anyway, although organizers say that all of that has been frozen. Part of the impetus given for the Emergencies Act, they had increase of policing, they had increase of resources, but they couldn't stop the funds without the Emergencies Act. So what does the fact that they were able to raise so much money say about the level of support for this movement and the fact that it was cross-border?
Well, not as a professor, but as a Canadian, any type of foreign interference when it comes to supporting any sort of civil or legal change in Canada enrages me. But as a professor, it essentially is concerning because it's evidence that there are foreign interest groups, the majority of this money coming from American interest groups that have some sort of benefit from sending money here to bolster the extremist elements of the trucker convoy. That's concerning. It shows that there's Canada as a potential staging ground for some of their rhetoric and ideology, and it shows that they can do so with relative ease, considering with Bitcoin and other sorts of cryptocurrency. It's very easy to send money across and support these types of minority, vocal, and extremist movements, which is a concern both to security and to just your general Canadian who should be, as I am, angry over foreign interference.
Professor Hoffman, I want to thank you for this.
My pleasure.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this, be sure to subscribe here, or you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.